Thanks, everyone for joining in, and especially the panelists who have joined in for this another session of the webinar. Just to give background to everyone who has joined, we have these sessions happening since the start of the first pandemic, wherein the team leads as a group, we aspire to pick up topics which are more relevant in the current scheme of things and how things are changing, and we discuss on that. And we call in industry experts who talk about these changes of subjects what we bring in, and it can help to the audience how the current changes are happening in the industry, so they can relate themselves. We'll also open up our session for you guys. Please put up your question in the Q&A tab. There's a tab which is reflecting as Q&A. Please do post your questions there so that we can pick it up with all the with the experts, and they will be answering to the questions what you're raising. So the topic what we have chosen for today is digital transformation in workforce management. Now, this is a very interesting and exciting topic which has been in discussion with the start of the first pandemic, and things have really picked up in the digital transformation space, and all companies have really gone through that transformation. So what we see today is the technology has amplified significantly over the past almost a year now. Irrespective of the current situation what we are in, technology has become a key enabler in the growth of any organization currently. So to discuss on this, we have three industry experts who have joined us. We have Pankaj. Pankaj is the head of people operations for delivery, and he comes with more than 11 years of experience. Prior to delivery, Pankaj has worked with companies such as Amazon, Industry Buying, Myntra, MetLife, and GE Capital. Pankaj also hold a PGDM from the Indian Institute of Management, Indore. We also will have with us Naveen. Naveen heads the HR at Licious. He comes with 20 years of experience in the field of HR, services, and talent acquisition. Naveen has previously worked with leading companies such as Starbucks India, Hindustan Unilever, Nestle, and Toyota. He holds a master's in social work from the School of Social Work. Last, we have Jyoti. Jyoti is an HR professional with over 15 years of experience and specialized in generalist roles. Currently, she is working with Pearson India Education Services as General Manager HR. In her current role, she is business partnering with sales and service delivery organization, heading the HR operations and the compensation administration. Over the years, she has extensively worked on evolving talent strategies, capability development, business transformation, business partnering, and organization design across IT services, product development, and education companies. Once again, I welcome all three of you, Pankaj, Naveen, and Jyoti. Thanks for joining this webinar. To start off the discussion, Pankaj, I would like to start this open with you. So for you, how is technology critical in HR, and how has it evolved over the years? Your thoughts, please.
Okay. Hi, everyone. And thanks, Joy, for giving this opportunity. Talking about technology in HR, it's as critical as the air is to us in these times, right? And especially when the scale of organizations is going big, the expectations of be it clients, be it your stakeholders, be it your employees who are the last beneficiaries. So everyone is benefited by technology, right? It's current times are not the ones when you are operating and you can survive without technology. That's nearly impossible. And especially when it comes to large organizations, large establishments like where I am working right now or I've worked in the past. So I really doubt if any of such organizations can survive without a technology, be it in terms of communicating to people, be it in terms of say sourcing or onboarding, or even imparting training in a distant platforms where you have to ensure the social distancing and hygiene in current times. I cannot even think of a scenario where without technology anyone can survive in current times. One perfect example I can think of is right. So earlier we used to screen and interview even the workmen, right? While someone was being inducted to an organization, there used to be a face-to-face interaction. Probably even if that was for 1 or 2 minutes, that's something which was not permitted in current times. And so what we came up is we implemented a online test platform which was mobile friendly. And with that, we realized that the scale of gathering the talent is much more. There's no risk of any kind of transmission, and with time we also realized that there was no impact on the kind of talent which was coming in into the organization. I really doubt if anything like that was possible without technology.
True, very true. So Naveen, if I may ask you the same question, like, what are your thoughts? How is technology critical in HR and how has it evolved over the years?
Yeah, so thank you, Ajay, first of all, for having me in this call. Yeah, so technology has been very integral part of how we've been running HR or life cycle of people who are working for us. Perhaps that's something which we have sort of adopted a little ahead of the curve to differentiate ourselves. But technology always evolves, and you got to be ahead of the curve to be able to make that as a differentiator from the employee experience standpoint. I think 20 years back when I started, perhaps we had a lot of forms to be filled and stuff like that. But I think technology has taken over all of that. I think initially started off with as an enabler to simplify processes. And I think over a period of time, it has become an enabler to drive employee experience, right? I think today it's been extensively used as a employee experience enabler rather than mere support to manage the processes in the organization, which anyway is the table stake. But I think even in experience space, it has evolved, right? Earlier, we used to use that as a platform to seek feedback and continuously improve. But today, it is something which allows you to continuously enable people to be engaged, connected, productive, and also being cared for, right? Because I think in this context, technology really helps us to in a way keep a tab on employee well-being on continuous basis, and also allow ourselves to reach them in time so that they can be supported with right enablers. So I think over a period of time, I have seen this evolve. I think it's a positive thing which has really helped organizations to manage the scale with much more ease, and also helping all of us, right, to drive greater level of connection within the organization. I think during pandemic especially, right, while everything else could have been managed, the connect piece was a difficult one to crack, and all of us have gone through the learning curve in terms of how do we stay connected with our people. How do we build that emotional connect with the organization? Because when you're not coming to work, or especially when you're joining newly and not having visited the office and not met the people face to face, it's very difficult to crack the code on emotional connect. I guess technology has evolved. I know we have struggled in the beginning, but I think in the last 6 months, we have evolved a lot to, make it help us in terms of building that emotional connect. I think platforms like this, we were not using a year back. Now I think this is part of our life. So I think it has evolved quite significantly over a period of time. And then we've developed new habits, right? and it's a good habit. I guess we've become much more efficient. We used to travel for every meeting to different places. Nowadays, we are okay to do those meetings virtually and still get the same results. I think I'm sure that will add significant value to this environment as well. So unnecessary travels hopefully will be reduced, and whatever we do will be productive, the best mechanism possible, leveraging technology. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. If I can have your opening comments, Jyoti, on how is technology critical in HR and how has it evolved over the years?
Actually, thank you, Ajoy, for this opportunity. First, I would like to borrow a line from Pankaj, who said technology is like air to us. And today I have faced that problem when there is a power shutdown since like early morning. Even the backup is not working and I have to move from my laptop to mobile. So it is that quick and fast, you're able to pick and choose options. That is what technology offers to you. So my day started like this. Okay, and so before we go ahead and understand how technology has helped HR evolve, let me just give you a couple of data points which I have observed. That, in the industry, a 3-year-old fintech startup acquires, or we can say rescues, a 37-year-old bank. A 5-year-old online investment platform acquires 13-year-old asset management company. A 7-year-old pharma is already in discussion to acquire a 24-year-old diagnostic lab chain. A 10-year-old edtech giant acquires 31-year-old coaching institute, just to name few, and all this is happening because these companies have an edge of technology. These are companies who are definitely accelerating their technology transformation, and they are able to break this ecosystem in India. So to speak about digitization or digitalization, I think we need to make clear distinction. There are 3 components to it. One is digitization, then second one is digitalization, and then digital transformation. I think HR, we started with digitization, where we started converting analog or print data into digital. We used to have our attendance registers, pay slips, and even your HRMS used to be in Excel. Then came the digitalization, where you automated all of this. Your processes became improved because you defined workflows which were, having online approval processes. I think today we are in a phase where digital transformation is picking up. And digital transformation is not just digitization or digitalization. It is about creating that impact to business, to people, to stakeholders. When we say impact, it is not just impact commercially, it is impact in terms of experience. So in HR, by digital transformation, what kind of experience we are creating for our employees or our business stakeholders, I think that becomes very important. Today, everybody is looking for anytime, anywhere, instant access, isn't it? They want anything which is compatible, not only on web, but mobile compatible, right? So today I'm rescued because I could have Zoom on my mobile. So I think technology is giving us that scale and reach. Just to give you an example, during pandemic, we never had that kind of traction for employee engagement activity because we had both remote employees and office employees. But during pandemic, when we introduced a couple of engagement activity, we could see the reach and we could see the engagement level has increased. And even we ended up doing a development center online, virtually, end to end. That we were skeptical, but end of the day, it was a success story. Thank you.
Thanks, Jyoti. Pankaj, coming back to you, what is your view of digital HR of the future? Where do you see the biggest gap in tech adoption in the HR life cycle? Is it hiring, onboarding, payroll, performance managing, or L&D?
Okay, I would say that we need to run HR the way typically organizations run their business operations, right? While the organizations are scaling up, the headcount is scaling up. You cannot increase the HR headcount in the same proportions. And that's where technology kicks in. That's where technology becomes the biggest enabler for us to scale up with the most efficient manner, right? So digital HR is again a mandate. It's not really an option anymore. However, when you ask me where do we have in current times, even in varied, be it the new age startups or the large firms, I would not say it's in talent acquisition or onboarding or HR analytics. I see the biggest gap in ER and IR. However, that's also imperative as well, because you need to have some kind of human touch in that aspect as such, right? But still, out of all of these business verticals within HR or functions, business lines within HR, I would say IR and ER are the two areas where we need to have more, somewhat more technological interventions.
Got it. Naveen, so another question. So another area where technology is helping today is analytics. So help us understand the role of analytics in digital HR?
So I think analytics, I guess technology, one biggest value it brought in is sort of preserved data for us, and data in a most consumable format, right? And hence allowing us to analyze and generate insights from that, and helping us to really take necessary actions. I think every aspect of HR life cycle or an employee life cycle, we have now plenty of data available, and not only internal, external benchmarks, etc. That is really helping us to take proactive steps. I think organizations have adopted technology right from recruitment to exit, all life cycles, and I've seen using early warning system through analytics, right, or the attrition. If there are, especially in the labor-intensive side of the business, where attrition management is important, and also you need to evolve your differentiation as an organization from the employee experience perspective, and also from all other aspects. So early warning system is something which I've seen being adopted quite extensively in labor intensive organizations. Apart from that, I think engagement, right? Checking whether people are happy. Gone are the days when you do once in a year employee engagement surveys and try and do a few things to sort out things. I guess now it is all era of pulse checks, and continuously it's important for one to gauge the mood in the organization and take necessary steps, especially in the current environment where you don't see the people more often. So you need mechanism to really take those necessary actions, right? So I've seen this part of analytics being leveraged quite extensively as well of late. All other things has been there. I think it has evolved. For example, in recruitment, right? What type of profiles tend to do better? So you do, based on the pattern which you've seen over a period of time, while you do not want to embed too much AI and perhaps build, a little bit of bias in the system, because we have seen some of those realities as well in certain industries. So we need to thoughtfully adopt technology and analytics in our approach without allowing our systems to be corrupted with the bias, which is one of the cons of adopting AI and too much of analytics.
Yeah. So Jyoti, how should you identify and select the right technology platform for your function?
Okay, I think first of all, it depends on the organization size, right? And what is your organization's strategy, especially in terms of growth. Today, maybe it's a startup and you have 300, 400 employees, but down the line 3 years, are you going for 2x, increase in the employee population or not? I think it's very important to first understand the growth plan, because whenever you pick a technology platform for HR, you should always have that flexibility to build it for future rather than, make it sufficient for the current. And definitely budget plays a vital role, but that is outside of the control. But end of the day, whichever technology platform you are using, ensure it is user-friendly and it is compatible with different platforms. tomorrow your technology HR platform should be able to interact with other functions platform. What happens many a time is, I don't know if you are aware, in ATS, application tracking system, because the kind of lengthy user experience it has, 50% of the applicants drop during the application process. And if your systems are not user-friendly, then the adaptation will be very low and very weak. So it is very important to go for something which is highly user-friendly, highly automated. It has end-to-end workflow. That is very important. The third aspect is when you're picking up a technology platform, whether it is on cloud or it is on premises, whether it is a standalone system, or you would like to go for subscription SaaS model, what we call subscription model, or you want to pick up the software end to end. I think these are a couple of decisions which will impact your budget. And again, have a system which is capable of integrating with other platforms in terms of API integrations. And also, you should pick a technology platform which helps you define future of workplace. Because, we are coming up with remote working policies, hybrid working policies. So whenever you're picking up a platform, whether it is conducive for future of work or not.
Pankaj, so there's an increasing tendency of people to socialize and communicate via digital device rather than through real life contact. Now, what this can do is this can easily lead to a sense of disconnect and isolation. So how should companies respond to mitigate such changes?
So interesting ones. And I had the same question some time back. And there are multiple ways to do it, right? You can have virtual engagement meetings. You can have more frequent one-on-ones. Otherwise, had it been in pre-COVID scenarios where you tend to meet people 5 or 6 times, same person in the office, but it has become very difficult these days, right? It's just what I typically do is I put on reminders for different small little things. It may be work anniversary, it may be personal anniversary, birthdays, birthday of a kid. Just keep those small reminders in place. A monthly, a virtual interaction wherein you can have those virtual team meetings, team parties, where you just talk about something which is not really an official thing, but say knowing people, knowing your teams on personal front. That's something you can do. There are quite a few instances wherein we've seen that current times are emotionally taxing as well. So we've got some external consulting platforms as well, wherein if someone is not willing to speak up even to the managers, right? So that's the kind of consulting platform we've got, which is an external professional consulting to people who are in distress and they are looking for any kind of support, right? So these are some of the different mediums we have implemented, and we can think of doing it, and any such more initiatives that we can bring in that helps.
So Naveen, so with the advent of technology and emergence of Generation Z, post the COVID breakout, is the human interface going to increasingly elevate in all HR touch points? For example, L&D, organization development, performance management system. How can organization ensure the continuity of human touch in all people-related transitions?
See, I think we sort of we end up spending almost 70% or a little more than that in work, right? So basically 70% of our time in terms of productive time, I would say, which basically means we cannot shy away from human touch. That's very important. That's the need of every person who's working in an organization, and it's a life skill, right? So I think the art is in the in the way we leverage technology. We can't allow ourselves to become victim of technology, and we should figure out a mechanism to leverage technology in a way that serves our need of connection, need of engagement, need of productivity, as I mentioned earlier. Now, many organizations do it differently. I don't think any organization can afford, to completely allow technology to, take over the workforce, right? I think there are some, we do it in our own way. We make sure that, so what we did is we sort of trained all of our managers to make sure that how to adopt new ways of working, right? How do you connect in this new ways of working? You got to have certain chats at a particular frequency depending on how it works. While we don't want to be prescriptive, we want to encourage certain connections between the people, which could be chats to Zoom, or some of those platforms need to be leveraged for people to talk to each other, connect between the team, and understand who does what, and perhaps a little beyond the work as well. Some of those opportunities we try and create more often, so that because it also depends on the organizational culture. I think Licious as an organization, we feel the main mojo of work is in the way you work together, right? And produce something which is really special for us to take pride in. In that context, people need to really connect between each other to be productive as well. Otherwise, you won't be able to get the required level of productivity, and more importantly, the type of quality of engagement which you're looking for. So we try and blend these things. I know there are limitations given the current context, but I don't think the human touch can be taken away by anything, because that's not in the interest of us being able to create an environment for people to really enjoy what they do.
Got it. Just so Jyoti, I want your thoughts on this. If we're deviating from a topic a little, it could be what I want to ask you is, a large number of jobs currently in the gig or the temporary economy require no special skills or knowledge. Yes. Do you think there will be more skilled, specialized roles that will move into these models?
It's already happening, Joy. More and more organizations are looking for, contingent workers, where, they will depend on these resources only for specialized work, and it also helps organization navigate their budget and resource planning, because some of the projects would not require you to have a person on board throughout the year. Some of the businesses can be cyclical. Some of the businesses can have special projects, and you need very niche skills. And you will not believe, sometimes, in my experience, we are hiring highly expert, technical experts who are at 15, 20 years of experience on gig projects. I think that is one part of it. And secondly, what is the new trend coming up is, within the organization, there are gig projects which are being opened up. Though I'm in HR, but globally, there is a gig project where, one of the finance partner wants some HR element to be, done in their project. They would borrow that talent, and it is not secondment or internal movement. It is just one time-bound project you do and you come out, and you're not ignoring your day job. I think, yes, the labor market and the talent market landscape is changing, and more gig works are coming into the place. Just to add what Pankaj and Naveen were saying in terms of how in the virtual world human touch is being lost, just to add a couple of points what I've experienced. I think the critical component is, how would you train and enable your manager? Because HR can't reach every employee in the organization. It is your manager who will be doing that for you, right? So you need to train the manager how to operate their workforce in the virtual world. I think that is very important. And we need to teach them being self-compassionate, because they have to manage their team, they have to manage their bosses, they have to manage business deliverables, at the same time their own mental well-being. So in Pearson, what we have come up with is we started engaging family members also in some of the engagement activities to compensate that gap. If there is an engagement activity, we don't limit only to employees, we would extend that to extended family of employee. The second thing what we did is, I think we introduced something called as mental health first aiders, who are professionally trained employees who can be the first aiders whenever there is a situation of crisis or situation of a dilemma, whether to reach out, to whom to reach out. I think these kind of ecosystem support will help employees navigate this no human interaction scenario.
Got it. Very beautifully. Pankaj, so with you managing a base of around 30,000 plus workforce, right, on the ground staff. So how have you seen, same question what I asked Jyoti, I'm asking you, right? So today a large number of jobs currently in gig or temporary economy requires no special skills or knowledge. Do you think there will be more skill specialist roles that will move into these models?
Yes, of course. I'll cite an example, right, where specifically our kind of business models, which are into e-commerce, and they have heavy cyclic or heavy seasonalities involved, right? Now, and then there is a thought of having what kind of employment models you need to have. If you just think about organizations like Swiggy or Zomato, they have spikes only for 3 hours or 4 hours in a day. Similarly, an organization like Amazon or Flipkart would have 3x or 4x spikes during Diwali season as such, right? Now you have two options: either to hire people for short-term contract for a very long duration. Similarly, there are spikes in business at times only for weekends, say Saturdays and Sunday. So gig workforce becomes the need. It becomes a necessity, and it will become more and more relevant. The way we've seen in more advanced geographies in Western countries, gig is the thing these days, right? Talking about will there be more specialized skill sets where we would be needing these kind of workforce? Yes, there will be. And it's not really just market driven, it's also individual driven also. Quite a few very senior professionals I know, they just want to, they don't want a full-time employment. They just want to work for specific duration, which at times is in sync with the need of the organization as well. So yes, this for sure will become for very, very, and even ultra specialized skills as well. Quite a few super specialty hospitals these days, even say cardiologist surgeon is also working as gig in multiple hospitals as such. Cannot give more complex example than this.
True, Pankaj. So just bouncing the same question with you, Naveen. Today, a large number of jobs in the gig and temporary economy which require no special skills or knowledge. So what do you think? There will be more skill specialized roles that will move into these models. How does your industry or how does your company looks when it comes to this aspect?
I think I completely agree with what Pankaj has just mentioned as well on this subject. I think gig is here to stay and grow big. Not only in unskilled space where perhaps we are sort of adopting it in a big way, but even in the skilled space, right? We have many options around that, and organizations are trying to embed that into the employment model, and we are doing our bit as well in that space. And I think it's in the interest of whole ecosystem, right? Industry as well as the talent. Talent also wants certain flexibility, and that's a significant chunk of talent as well, right? So I think organization has to figure out a employment model which meets the needs of the talent, right? Because we can't be looking at these things in isolation. End of the day, we are part of the ecosystem. we want to create opportunities for best of the talent to come and make that impact in the ecosystem we are pursuing, right? So organization will always try and create some of those enablers, and I think it's good that this particular trend is evolving, which only means that everybody has their space, and there is an ecosystem which sort of enables the skills in a much more democratized manner, and also allows each talent to express themselves in the space they derive their purpose, right? An organization gets the best by creating those options for people to take up projects which they really love and passionate about, and that would mean they will bring 200% of their mind share to deliver the type of impact which you want to deliver. So I think it's a win-win, and when moment it becomes a win-win, and I think all other enablers will fall in place. That's my firm belief. Technology, policies, government regulations has to fall in place moment the whole ecosystem is valuing this model. I think it's good that even government has acknowledged this and incorporated this concept in the labor code, while a lot more need to happen in terms of embedding that into the legislation. But I think that's a great beginning, which will evolve this model quite significantly going forward.
Got it. Jyoti, coming back to you, until a few years back, we largely had a permanent workforce in organization. Now, with these new models, do you see the percentage of permanent workforce for certain industry declining to less than the majority in the long run? What are your thoughts?
I think over the last 5 years, the ratio of contingent workers or contract full-time or temporary contract staff has increased. I think today, if I see within my own organization, I think in the last 3 years we have been increasing, but I can't say that today it has surpassed the full-time regular employee count. But yeah, I think down the line 2-3 years, if it is going to be a successful business model and it creates business impact and still delivers the performance for the organization, I think industries are going to adopt that more and more, and there can be a time where your contractual staff can be more than your full-time regular staff.
Pankaj, I'm picking up a question, and this is from one of the attendees who have asked you. So what is your vision for technology in HR in an organization? Should tech follow your existing processes, or your processes follow a beautifully designed tech?
Okay, so I've done a lot of study for different tech platforms during my stints, right? And I've never felt that there's a platform available which would meet all of your organizational needs. Should an organization change with respect to the platform available? I personally feel so, and there are multiple modules available, and all of this is a function of how much time, effort, and money you want to spend on the kind of platform you want to explore. So I would say for large complex organizations, they should always customize the tech basis their needs. For small establishments, wherever you feel that you need to optimize between cost and available offerings, you may think of the options available in the market right now. Now, there are multiple thoughts that you need to bring in. While I'll again talk about getting a large tech change in an organization, you need to have a buy-in and a understanding from all the end users. Say a worker who is going to apply for his leave, attendance, and compensatory offs, for an example. The drivers of those end users, so for an example, supervisors or team leaders who will then be approving some of those requests, and how those process workflows will act. For an example, every company will have a different leave policy. And then there are some tools available who are not who are purely cloud-based and which are not customizable. So should you be going through that or not? Then in very large establishments and primarily MNCs, you need to have a public relations team, you need to have a compliance team sign off, you need to have a InfoSec, information security sign offs in place, right? Then there are enablers like HR and finance. So if you are going to make a big tech enabled change, then all of these departments is something where you need to get a buy-in and then move ahead. Again, it's a choice for the organization you want to make, and the kind of investments in terms of money and efforts you want to make. That should be the deciding factor.
Got it. Naveen, again, I'm taking another question from an attendee who asked. Now the question is that if there's a role and there are 2,000 people who have applied for that particular role, and you're doing this process for ATS today. So what parameters are you going to set, and how are you going to write the recruitment process by HR? You can give an example, or if you can give on to me.
So I think obviously in cases where there are multiple applications, technology can really help, because you're not just uploading the CV. Obviously, the ATS will enable you to identify key criteria as well, and there are you can also have certain interview questions also embedded. There are various mechanisms to get this sharper for us to shortlist better, and also provide a greater experience to the people involved, right? Because we many times forget that there is a element of candidate experience which is equally important as we look at the effectiveness of hiring process. I think again, art is in getting both of them right. Important that if criteria is not right for recruiter to sort of screen 2,000 CVs and respond after 15 days time. Everybody wants to get a response as quickly as possible. Technology can help in a big way, because you will have certain screening questions or criteria which is predefined, and if you answer appropriately, that can screen out quite easily as well. So there are enablers through technology we need to use based on what we need, and based on the business context, and based on the role as well. And I think that's the right use of technology, and at the same time it gives a timely feedback to the stakeholders, right? And even recruiters need not screen 2,000 CVs. They will only screen the ones which is screened by the system. But I think again, we should not become victim of technology beyond a point, and perhaps use that as a preliminary screening mechanism rather than trying to do the recruiter's job, which is also an important, because it has an element of judgment involved in terms of screening as well.
Got it.
Can I also add to what I was saying?
Please.
So even when during ATS screening, you will get applications which are internal applications, and you will get some employee referrals. I think you will get that categorization readily available. Usually what recruiter does is, because internal employees are always preferred, so they first, screen them and then qualify or disqualify. Then they go to the referral, screen them, qualify, disqualify, and then they go to the external candidates. I think that's the usual standard practice. And nowadays, most of the ATS come with this prescriptive or suggestive, preferences on the resumes. But yes, what Naveen was saying, that, machine learning can come with bias. So you cannot just blindly go and say these are top preferred, because the system will star the resume on its own. And how it stars is because you would have pre-fed some of the key skills, keywords into the system while creating a requisition that gives you a top 10, top 50 resumes for you to pay attention first.
Got it. So Riti, I'm again picking another question from the attendees who have asked. Now, what they're asking is how to retain the employees in scenario when there are multiple waves of job cuts which are happening, and how is that going to affect the employees who are there, and the pressure what they go through. So
Yeah, I think this is one common problem most of the organizations are facing, where, at one side, organization is going for restructuring and there are retrenchments happening. At the same time, you should retain your key talent. I think there is always been a sense of insecurity which creeps in during this time. I think it is very important for an organization, HR or managers or business leaders, to secure your high potential employees. You need to kind of give them a safety net, telling that while this is happening, which is inevitable, but create that self-esteem among those set of high pot employees, telling that we value your expertise and the experience what you have had in the organization. Have a very open conversation and tell them, create a safety net for them. It is very important.
Yeah. Coming back to you, Pankaj, these are little business-related questions which we have, which we want to ask you. So when do we go back to the pre-COVID levels of growth in this country? Do you see it 2 quarters away, 3 quarters away, or longer? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so it's heavily unpredictable right now, and I think the answer to this even WHO doesn't have right now. It really depends on how the next mutations of the virus happens. It might become severe, it might become light. You never know. For people, quite likely for people who've been vaccinated, and now organizations are thinking in that direction. If someone is fully vaccinated, then they will call. So again, I would divide it into essentials vis-a-vis non-essentials. Essentials are still working, right? So wherever, for an example, I can take the liberty of Delicious as an organization or Delivery as an organization, right? All the e-commerce which were linked to delivery of goods, they were permitted, and people in the field are and have been operational throughout. In the corporate world, organizations these days are thinking on the lines of, if people are fully vaccinated, then in the staggered manner, we will call people only those guys who've been vaccinated. Now, vaccination will also have a next booster dose. Say if government says that 6 months down the line, you need to have that booster dose in place as well, which will safeguard you against the new upcoming mutated viruses. Then again, these calls will be taken time and again, but my personal gut says that 2 quarters from now, people who are fully vaccinated, they will be welcomed in office in a staggered manner.
Right. Going back to you, I'm taking another question from the attendees. Now we spoke about job cuts. We spoke about people working from home. So someone wants to know that, is there any training available on the emotion quotient, what one goes through? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so there are quite a few options out there in terms of training, but I think it's about embracing empathy in the way we conduct ourselves, right? From a manager's perspective, to create that sense of comfort amongst people, because one of the underrated skills or capability of managers is emotional quotient, right? We do not call it out as explicitly. Perhaps emotion as a term is not celebrated much in the corporate environment, which is not, perhaps that particular thing has been tested in this times of pandemic. But I guess, making that as one of the key competencies within the organization to really, create awareness, embed that into culture of leadership, culture of managing, culture of, organization is an important part to really, create that sense of comfort within the organization to deal with them, VUCA world or ambiguities, which we, keep talking about. And that's the only certain things which we see, because every now and then things change and we need to adopt, and we go through this emotional roller coaster very now and then. So as an organization, we need to, embrace this and build our resilience towards, some of these things. There are plenty of trainings. NHRD has done a campaign recently. They've done 2 versions of that recently. and the videos are available for you to, in the YouTube, and various other forums have conducted. I'm sure team leads would have taken up this subject as well. So I think there are plenty of content on this available, just that you need to prioritize this and understand what it means. And I think, in essence, it's about living yourself into totality, right? When you're coming to work, you don't need to be too different than what you are. And if you're authentic and honest to your own self, and if you carry yourself, like that, and perhaps rub the environment around you to be themselves, most of these problems or the challenges gets addressed. End of the day, all of us are emotional, beings, right? So the element of that is there in each of us. Just that we need to permit ourselves to be, we need to express that, and perhaps sometimes being vulnerable does help us to, create that environment in our teams to really bring that alive and create a lot more, sense of comfort for the people around us.
See, adding to this point, while there is one part of training, these are self-paced learning. If your symptoms are just, that I just want to know how to navigate my own self, if that is the solution you are finding, I think training suits. But, we are not going for clinical diagnosis, but I'm saying if you think that it is recurring, your burnouts are lengthier, and you would like to talk to somebody, and there is a persistent feeling of fatigue, I think you should just listen to your body, listen to your mind, and try to seek help. Because many of the organizations have something called employee assistance program, and these employee assistance programs are third-party neutral certified counselors, and not necessarily you need to have something really serious to go and talk to them. If I'm not feeling really good about myself or my well-being, there is no problem, go talk to them and just have an open conversation. I think it is important to listen to your body, listen to your mind, see what kind of symptoms you are having. If it is just that you just want to know how to manage your work, manage your well-being, if that is a thing, training is the best thing. But otherwise, if it is recurring, persistent, then you should look for some help within the organization, outside the organization. It is very important.
Got it. So I'm taking up another question from one of the attendees. So panelists, so we have people from multiple companies who have joined in. So one of them want to know that, Jyoti, they want to know that post-COVID, what should be the office resumption plan, and how should the entire team should be looked to, which team should come in, and how should that categorization should happen?
I think it depends on the industry and depends on the organization culture. Okay. And by now we know that most of the work which we felt cannot be done from home, we have seen success stories. Yes, it can be done remotely and can be done from home. So many of the organizations are coming up with a policy where, they're going for hybrid work policy. When you say hybrid work policies, as I think Pankaj was mentioning, there will be essential and non-essential services. Essential services like, a facilities team or a compliance team, which needs to be in office, and they will become office work or office employee, right? People whose role has been identified that without even coming to office, they can do their job remotely. I think they can opt to become a remote employee. And if some people say that, it is not very easy for me to navigate my work being at home, I would like to come to office sometimes, then the hybrid work culture comes, 2 days in a week or 3 days in a week, you come to office, and 2 days in a week, you work from home. But as I told you, it depends on the industry. If it is a highly sales-driven organization where people are supposed to be in field, you can't tell them that, you sit at home and work, So it depends on the role. It depends on the organization culture and the business we are into. But most of the organization, wherever they felt, some of the roles can be done, executed efficiently from home, then those people are continuing to be at home.
So this next question, anyone can pick, Pankaj, anyone of you can pick up. So we spoke about technology and how technology has helped us. And so what do you think in your business? Will there be a certain percentage of your workforce which will and will permanently work from home?
Sure, Ajoy, I'll take this up. And there are quite a few roles, and you will not be surprised and seeing the talent, and barring the legal complications that that someone who's working for India and paying income tax in India should be working in India, right? I cannot have a workforce based out of Dubai working for India. So barring those complications, keeping that aside, however, now, at least even for my own team, I've started thinking on those lines that if there's a very good talent based out of, say, a city like Coimbatore, a suitable fit for the organization and can do justice, can handle things remotely very well, I don't mind keeping that resource in his hometown or her hometown, and the person can be deputed there. There are quite a few roles where we don't mind keeping it 100% work from home. There is a very good talent across India based out of, say, there are at times when women compromise, especially after a childbirth or a marriage, but the talent is worth keeping in an organization. Those compromises should not happen at all. And we do have such opportunities available as well, wherein we don't mind a person, a good resource who can perennially work from home and then continue with us.
Naveen, Jyoti, your thoughts? How is it your organization looking at it?
Yeah, I think this model will, as we said earlier, it can't be one size fits all approach. Yeah, because there are different roles have different deliverables and the nature of work. So it has to be looked at from each role's perspective. First question, you would perhaps in the future, whenever you determine a role, that will be the first question you will ask. Should it be based out of office, or can it be working remotely, etc. So based on the role, talent, reality, people will start taking calls, how it should operate and things like that, obviously without compromising the objective of the role, right? Organization should get the value, and we should make it work from the talent perspective as well. So I think, I'm sure organizations will do, and we have started that work already to ask questions around this to each of the roles, and then determine what would be the ways of working which would really help us to make it work for the talent as well, the organization. We need to create a lot of enablers for that, which I think by force we have created in last 1 year, and I think that will continue. Just that organization need to get used to the environment that the few of them will be around and few of them may not be coming to office more often. That's a little bit of cultural reset, which I think will happen as we get back to work in the months to come.
Jyoti, what about your thoughts? How is your company?
I think in Pearson, we are already looking forward for a hybrid work environment, and we are giving that authority or autonomy to the manager and the employee to decide. And there are qualifiers which will map a role, whether it is can be mapped to a remote working environment or not. If those qualifiers are met, then I think manager and employee can mutually agree and decide on the work setup. So we are moving towards hybrid work environment.
Got it. So again, this is open to anyone who want to answer from the panelist. So with the current levels and with COVID coming in and with technology, work from home, so do you guys see that there will be lesser jobs in the country in next 12 months? And the second part of that question, what is that? Will the average wages also will go down? What are your thoughts?
We have not seen that pan out, at least in our industry, right? Be it the compensation part as well as the employment. As things come back to normalcy, I feel employment generation will pick up. because economies also will start growing, significantly than what we have seen in last 1.5 years. So hopefully that should trigger a lot of employment generation. Obviously, there would be some of the roles which will be done differently. People would have figured out new business model to manage in the current reality. Based on that, the type of roles may evolve, and we need to make sure that our people are skilled enough, and perhaps even the colleges or academic world needs to evolve their curriculum to make sure that we industry gets the right skill set for the new sort of roles which are evolving in the market as well.
So I'll go next. So what happens is it depends on the industry. There are some industries which are negatively impacted, and there are industries which are booming because of the situation. So the reality is different for the companies where I think their financial health is not good and it is deteriorating, and some of the industries the financial health is becoming more enriching, right? So it depends on that. Yes, definitely, maybe job market had become slow, but I see a trend that it is picking up again. Especially, you say maybe one of the skill set is becoming redundant, but there are alternative skill sets, competencies which are offshooting. Because of this COVID, pandemic situation, there are new industries coming up and there are new capabilities coming into the job market. So as rightly said by Naveen, once we reach a new normal, I can't say the old normal, the new normal, I think economy will open up and things will be back to normal. Coming back to your second question on the compensation or wages, in my experience, I don't think so it has reduced or compensation benchmarks have come down because of the pandemic.
Yeah. So again, it's purely industry specific. With travel and entertainment are the two industries which are worst hit. With yesterday's announcement of the government and the relief package, wherein things like there's Indian visa waiver fees for first 5 lakh tourists which are coming into India. There are attempts being made to boost these industries as well. However, I've not seen a dip in compensation. However, there is a stagnation. There are no increments in some of the impacted industries. But again, this is a matter of time, as it has happened in the past, be it during recession times, be it during pandemics in the history as well. It's just a matter of time, and things will be on track in quite likely in 2022 onwards.
Got it. So that's it. I think that's the last question which I had from the attendees also. Thanks, Pankaj. Thanks, Kavin. Thanks, Jyoti, for your time, and thanks for spending and giving your insights on how things are. It was really info and insightful. I hope people who have attended has definitely learned and have got the questions what they were asked. And I especially thanks attendees that you have participated and asked all sort of relevant questions which are relevant for your function and for your specific companies. I hope this session has really helped you. Thanks once again. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ajay. Thanks, everyone. Bye.